Who were the Rakatan Infinite Empire? Let's find out, shall we? The Rakatan Infinite Empire was an empire that originally came from the planet of Lihon, also known as Rakata Prime, and they would later invade and control 500 planets full of Force-sensitive beings, two of them being Kashyyyk and Korriban. 500 planets was quite a lot of territory at the time. How did this come to be? Well, it is because of the Qua, who built infinite gates to many systems across the galaxy, which included the Rakatan home of Lihon, in the year 36,453 BBY. Quite a long time ago. The Qua would teach the Rakatans the ways of the Force, but would find out that the Rakatans wanted to use the dark side of the Force only when it was too late. And by use the dark side of the Force, I mean abuse the Force, which would later come back to bite them. They would try to fight them off and destroy the Infinite Gate, but the Rakatans would ultimately win, and enslave 500 planets that were full of Force-sensitive beings. And the Rakatans would use those beings as slaves to fuel their warships, as well as constructing a space station slash factory slash superweapon that would be able to kill a star by feeding off the negative energy of nearby planets, which allowed the superweapon to build an enormous amount of warships in 30,000 BBY. The specific amount of ships it can produce from killing one star is unknown, but at one point I was able to find an estimate of 2 million starships from killing one star. This space station was called the Star Forge. The Rakatans would subjugate the Qua's home world of Dathomir brutally, as revenge for the destruction of many of the Infinite Gates during their annexation of the Qua's holdings. Because of this, the Qua would devolve into lizards called Qui. During this time, the Night Sisters believed the Qua's Infinite Gates caused voids and wounds to Dathomir, forcing the spirits of the planet to call for the Rakatans' arrival. And the sisters even believed the spirits turned the Qua into Qui lizards. The Rakatans had been quite intrigued by the rancors they found on Dathomir, which they would transport many of them to Lihon to learn more about them. They were also very helpful in driving back the Gree to their home world. The Rakatans did not like the Gree, as the Gree could actually rival the Rakatans, unlike many other similar civilizations across the galaxy. One time, the Rakatans introduced a rancor to the planet of Gamor, to which the Gamorreans saw as a mythological creature due to their culture not being as technologically advanced as the Rakatans. All of this was taking place in the early stages of the galactic invasion of the Rakatans, Dathomir being number one on their list. The Rakatans would set up their prison planets to trap Force users on the planet of Belsavis. They would use stasis technology in order to trap Force users, as well as monsters, warlords, and many other powerful beings, eventually including their own leader, Soa, also known as the Infernal One. A lot of these most likely would have been the Gree. The planet was unique for being able to devour many other worlds with its razor, according to inscriptions within its tomb. The later-to-be Galactic Republic would call this planet the primary Rakatan prison complex. It must have been challenging to capture, as it actually took the entire Rakatan Empire just to take that planet. This would have most likely been before the construction of the Starforge, however. Later on, in 27,700 BBY, the Rakatans would discover Korriban, as well as the Sith species that resided on the planet, before they became the Sith Lords we know today. Holocrons would be introduced to the Sith King. However, the King would find out about the Rakatans' intentions and would be one of the few empires that would be able to drive off the Rakatans. They would be lucky, unlike Tatooine, who got nuked by the Rakatans, turning a lush green planet with so much water to a desert planet that we know today. Other planets the Rakatans would take would be planets in the core, such as Coruscant, which was home to humans. Even though Coruscant was ruled by the Rakatans, humans would be able to build sleeper ships somewhere around 27,500 BBY, allowing them to spread to many core worlds, including planets ruled by the Rakatan Empire. There were rebellions like the Eshkar who would free many enslaved worlds, but the Rakatans would eventually imprison them all once the Rakatans intervened. However, this was the beginning of the Rakatans' inevitable fall. Where a powerful authoritarian empire rises, it must eventually fall. The problem started to arise when the Starforge began feeding off the Rakatans' force abilities due to their dark side abilities being negative. They would also have to try and control various factions vying for power, many slave rebellions, a force group known as the Jedi wiping out one of their leaders as well as a large part of their fleet, and a virus that took away the Rakatans' force abilities, but some believed it to have actually been the Force that created this disease due to the Rakatans' abuse of the Force. This all took place in 25,200 BBY, and because of all these factors, a civil war would ensue in their ranks, and they would ultimately crumble to near extinction, being lost to time until the Jedi Civil War, where they were rediscovered but were alleged to have been extinct. However, in canon, the Rakatan Infinite Empire was mentioned in Andor Season 2, confirming that the Rakatans are now canon. Though the Rakatans did ultimately fall from their own greed and tendency to lean towards the dark side, the galaxy would use their technology to travel across the galaxy, installing the Galactic Republic, which would last over 10,000 years and give us many cool ships and vehicles, as well as weapons that we would now see in later Star Wars material. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know if you would like me to cover any other kind of era, whether it's the Galactic Empire era, the Rebel era, the Clone Wars, before the Clone Wars, the Old Republic. But otherwise, next time I will be covering the first Jedi Civil War, where the first Sith diverged from the Jedi. But otherwise, have an amazing day, and I'll see you guys next time on The Star Wars Historian.